All right, everyone. So let's move on to the next stage. Now we're going to begin adding the menu functions. So far we had only been dealing with the aesthetics, how it looks. Okay. Now we're going to begin to actually create the functionality. And in this class, we'll start with the start menu buttons, which will make our scene run. Okay. So let's do this then. Let's get going. First thing we'll do is we'll toggle to our graph. And let's think about what we need to do. We need to, when a button's pressed, I need to remove this menu from my screen. So that needs to disappear. Okay, that's the first thing that needs to happen. And then the loading screen needs to show up. So it removes the menu from the screen, then activates our loading widget, which is for 8 seconds, if you remember. Okay, and then the scene begins so that we can navigate and move around in our house. And when we're about to put our scene on the screen, we need to enable the crosshair widget. That's important. Okay, so this is step by step of what we need to reproduce. And remember this actor blueprint here. Okay, that blueprint we added to the scene so that we can, because we've already put it in there, we can summon the blueprints, okay, or reference them. So we placed it just here in our scene, and it creates this bit here creates a background widget. Here it creates a left menu widget, and we had some things below here that ran the functions and added the background as well. Okay, and here this has below here some events. But what we're missing? Well, we need to add an instruction widget. Okay, not an instruction for how they work, but instruction for loading. Okay, so that's missing here. Let's do that now. Let's create a widget, and I'll select loading screen. There we go. And I want to promote this to a variable. So we've got it stored, and just in case we need it, in just case we need to reference that, let's rename it to loading ref. Okay, so far I've just created my widgets, and I'll also create an event for the loading screen. And in the same way we did here, we'll create a custom event, and we'll call it add loading. Cool. Okay, we can copy this because we need it to show on screen. The only difference is the variable, okay, which is a loading reference. So we'll use that, connect it to the target, and we'll create another custom event, and we'll call this one remove loading because we want to remove it from the screen after the 8 seconds. So I'll create the same here, remove from parent, and put that there, and we need the same reference to the target. Cool. Let's comment this and call it add loading screen. And there you go, you guessed it. This one here is going to be called remove loading screen. Okay, perfect. So we've already created the events we need so far. And this was created just here. This part was created just for a demonstration to make it visual, but we don't need it anymore. I'll do this over here. We'll do it somewhere else, but I'm already running these routines anyway, so I don't really need this to be there. What I do need though is the event to start. So when I press start, the first thing that happens is it needs to remove my widget screen. That is, we're going to remove the background of the menu. Okay. So let's think about this. Which are the two widgets that compose our menu? Let's do it here. I think they're these ones. Let's add the functions in order. I think that'd be the best way to do. So when I click the start button, it's going to execute the functions, isn't it? And it's going to execute that on clicked here. This is the event when I click, and the first thing that plays is the sound. Great. Second thing, I need to remove my widget from the front menu. So let's see how we can do this. I've already created some events for this, okay, to get going, which are these here, okay. So that will really help us because that's the creation and the removal events for the widgets, okay. So that's why, as we said earlier, that's why we set it out like this. So I've already got these routines created. What I need to do now is I need to start from here, okay. So starting from here, the widget needs to access this blueprint. So I can access these created events and I can run them because of how I've set them up. So now I'll show you another type of blueprint connection, and you might tend to use this quite often. We saw that there are direct connections, didn't we? Like cast2. We also saw a blueprint interface. And now I'll show you another one, which is a really interesting one for our class. And when you have blueprints for widgets, it's easy then to access between them. So there is a method of connecting them. Okay, so I can choose the actors from which class I've created here. Okay, so I can choose the actor class that I want to be referencing. So when you insert them into the scene, they're actors from the class. Okay, so they can be referenced in our blueprints. Okay, so there is a node called get all actors of class that we'll use. There we go. So that's it. Get all actors from a specific class. So here I'll only direct which class it has that I want to get. So which class is that? It's BP my menu, which is the one that we created. Okay, so what's it going to do? Well, it's going to enable me to get the actors specifically from that blueprint. So I believe I have 10 actors in this class. So it's going to get all of them, or allow me to access all of them. So if I only have one, it will only get one. Here I've already searched in that class, so I understand how many I've got, but it's going to allow me to just choose whichever one I want. So I can analyze this node. What's the result it gives to me? Well, it returns out actors in plural. Okay, you can see this here, this symbol. It's a bit different, isn't it? And I'll quickly talk about this just so we understand what it means. But on another class, we'll see it in a bit more detail. This here is a kind of variable of the array kind. Okay, so you know we get different types of variables. So what is an array? Well, an array is a group of values, not variables, but values. And when I insert it here, for example, this integer variable here, it's one value for integer, one variable with one value, right? But here I can switch it, for example. If I click this icon, I've got a few other options. So there's a single variable with one value. There's the array, set, and map. In our case, we're talking about this kind of variable, the array. So what is an array type variable? Well, it's a variable with a group of values, which is related with one kind of variable. So if here we have an integer variable, I'll have an integer array. Here I have these values, which are integers, okay, or whole numbers. So if I wanted to add a value here, for example, I have an array element. I can add as many as I wish. An index from 0. The value is 0, and here I can have a value of 2. I can have a value of 4. I can have 5. I can have 1. So here I have an array of 5 elements with different numbers. That's how that works. Okay, so that's what it's used for. But in practical terms, it's most used to create value groups of information. So it's not just values like elements or islands, for example. There's more to it than that. You can use it for a character to create or to capture many elements, inventories in games, stored items. So yeah, there's several ways to use it, but basically it's a group of elements within the same characteristics or the same quality. That's basically what it is. But here for us in ArcViz, it's rarely used because it's kind of uncommon to have something with a group of values when you're walking around the house. Okay. However, we have another blueprint in which we'll go a little bit deeper into this kind of variable later on. But it's important for us now to understand what it means, okay? That it's a group of variables. So we have an order as well in this array too. For example, if I have values such as 2, 4, 2, 7, and 9, then I have 5 values and the position of each here in the index, okay? So for position 0, value 2, position 1, value 4, etc., etc. Position 3, value 7, position 4, value 9. So the most important is really to know the order, okay? Because the position within the array follows the index, just like you did in the materials earlier on. So the position of the value of 4 in the array is 1, index 1, and so forth, okay? So order is important. So here, what happens is that I'm going to get an actor, all the actors in the class, right? And if I get to my scene, I have, so here's my actor. I inserted it in this one, BP underscore my menu. And this is the first actor that I imported. So it's the first element in an array. If I made an array with all actors from this class, this would be the element 0. I make a copy, number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Okay. So it's just important for us to understand the order and how it works with the array, because this array characteristic, when we use this kind of node, is going to get all the actors of class. Okay. So if you only have one actor in the scene, you don't need to worry, because there will only be one element in the array. So you don't need to worry so much about how you handle things. But in more advanced Blueprint, a more advanced Blueprint class, we'll need to think about it more carefully. So in our case, we have one actor. This single actor occupies the position 0. And I'll get this actor. How do I get an actor within an array? Well, you just pull out here and click get. And I use this array, get a copy. And you get a copy of this actor. Okay. And you can see here that you get the index of 0. And it's green for the same color that we need, the integer, and you've got the symbol of the array on behind the words get. Okay. So I have exactly what I wanted here from this. I can promote to a variable, and I can have a reference of the actor that I want. And in this case, that is the Blueprint my menu. And with the events I created, this is going to help us a lot. Okay, so basically this is set up like this. So it's going to get a reference, and when I seek or want the reference, even though I did this in the wrong place, let me just put it in the right place now. Under construction. Cool. So yeah, so as I was saying, when I begin play, it's going to find the reference of the blueprint that I'm asking it to find. And that's going to help us a lot. Okay. So let's just start over again. So the first thing we want to do after pressing the button, the start button, is going to click the sound. It's going to remove my menu on the left hand side, my background as well. So both will happen practically at the same time. So let's do this here. So I've already got my reference here. I can drag that out, and then I can find it by going in remove background. Okay, so we can call that function, which is this event here that I created. So we've got access to it now. And when I click this button, I'm going to connect to this blueprint here where the events I created are, and then I'm going to remove them. Okay, perfect. And I'll remove the background, and I'll also remove the left menu as well. And they're going to remove at the same time. Okay, so they should be gone together. So let's return to our main menu. Okay, so I clicked the start button, play the sound, remove the background, remove the menu, and it will go away from the screen, and it'll be replaced by our loading screen. So where is that? Let me get it. There we go. So let's just look at this and analyze it again. So this image is going to appear, and within this image, this is the construct. My animation is running, so it will open while playing. Now let's go back, and now I'll add my loading screen to this section here. So let's just move that. Cool. Let's find it. Okay, so it's this one here. Perfect. Let's add that in. Add loading. Because it's an event, we can call it in, just like the other one. Plug that into there. Okay, so I removed the background, removed the left menu, and then added the loading screen. I've laid it out this way so it makes sense. Okay, so it's going to run for 8 seconds, and then it's going to remove this from the screen. Okay, so I have to give a time of 8 seconds for this to run in that loop as we set it up, and then it's going to go. And in fact, we can do this here. Let it run for 8 seconds. We can do this with adding a delay before the next function appears. Okay, so we're going to like hold it off for 8 seconds before anything else happens. So let's remove, that's going to remove the loading screen. One more event is needed here. Remove loading. Okay, so it's almost like a pair of stairs, isn't it? So I'm removing the loading screen too. Let's test it as it is for now. Save and see how it works. Oh, something's happened here. Why did it do that? Ah, okay. So it didn't enter because I removed something, didn't I? Something that I probably shouldn't. These events here. I guess maybe I mix things up. So we shouldn't remove anything that we removed here. Let's put that back in. Add background, it was, wasn't it? So that has to be shown. Add left menu because it has to be in the scene. Okay, and now my crosshair is showing. So let's see my crosshair blueprint as well, just to check it. Is that one? So I just need to disable it because it's not supposed to appear at the beginning, is it? It's only when we go into the scene that it shows up. Okay, so let's press play and check it out. Okay, so the menu's open. Okay, they're working. You press the start button. It's going to remove the screens. Okay, there we go. So that works. But where's my crosshair? Well, I don't have it because I didn't add it to the scene, did I? So let's add a little short delay before we go any further to the sound. I believe 0.2 should be enough. Just a little bit of room because there was a slight delay on the sound. I don't know if you heard it your side, but if you followed it exactly the same, you would know exactly what I mean. Just in case the sound isn't coming across. So it's going to remove these menus now. Add the loading screen. There's a delay. Then remove the loading screen, and then here we can add our crosshair event constructs. Okay, so let's get that. This one here is what we need. So we need to get a reference for this crosshair blueprint in our widget. So let's do this over here. We can follow this sequence, okay, where we're getting all actors of class and then typing get BP crosshair is the one we want. Okay, so BP crosshair. There we go. And then I'll get a copy. And I just have one in the scene. It's the same situation as before. 0 is itself. Okay, promote to variable. BP crosshair. So there's our reference. Hopefully you're understanding now how this is, the principles behind all of this. Connect that to that. Great. So that's got the reference for us. And that's linked up nicely. So we can comment on this. We can call it get BP. So not MP, get BP my menu reference. And over this side, we can call this get BP crosshair reference. We're really starting to see the value of comments, right? Helping us understand what's going on. So I'm getting the two references in that section. And so now I've got the reference, I can drag it in, get, and pull it up and start adding the crosshair. So we need to add the crosshair call function and connect them to there. Cool. All right, so let's test it and see how it looks. Let's play. So press the start button. There's a little delay and it's going to go around for 8 seconds whilst it's loading. Nice. So it ran and now my crosshair is here. Perfect. Nice, right? So maybe I might increase the delay a little bit more, maybe to 0.3 seconds on the sound there, so it doesn't last for too long. And we can go back and test it. Test it later actually while we test other things. Let me just show you this detail now. I left something for now just to avoid confusion earlier. Here in the interface blueprint, I'm handling these things without any issues. But let's suppose I click here where there's no button or anything. Okay, so what happened? Well, my cursor's gone. And why did it disappear? This is interesting. You might notice that when we click play, there's no menu, right? So going straight to the scene is normally what happens, and you need to click to start moving the character, and the cursor disappears, doesn't it? Okay, well, this is exactly what's happening here. Even though this is a blueprint, we're looking at a simple image, really, a widget in front of our scene. So starting from the moment I click here, it entered into navigation mode, and I can't see it because the image is right in front of me. Now, I can't change it anymore. I've lost control, basically. I can't click the buttons or see where I'm navigating. So it's important we're aware of this. It's important when editing widgets to limit the access to this control or limit the game control. Otherwise, your user will get lost and think that it's not responding. So we can do this here by changing the game mode, so to speak. Now, there are two modes that we can use. We got the user interface mode or the UI. Okay, so when we're editing while in a widget, it's important to leave it limited to only run and access the widgets. Okay, and when it isn't happening, when we're not in the menu, to only access the game. So how do we do this? Well, over here, for example, is my start button, right? So that's how we've set it up. So let's do this over here in the blueprint menu. So when will we need to use this feature? Well, when I create my blueprint, when it appears on screen. So that's the when it appears on screen. At that point, I can change my game mode by limiting it. I'm going to put it in this area here, add it to the left menu event. So when I add this left menu or the background, it doesn't matter which one you decide to use, but since it's the left menu, I'm going to use that. So because this is going to be used for pausing as well, right? So we'll add it in here. We'll change my game mode at this point. So how do we do this? Well, there is a node called set input mode game only. And there's another one called set input user interface only. Okay, so in case you're using a different interface, maybe a touch screen, you know, whatever it is you're using, you build it accordingly. So I'll only enable the usage of the user interface. Let's do it this way. This node comes from the controller, okay? And I can only access it from the player controller. So the first thing I need to do here is get the player controller, there we go. And from it, I can do this setup. So you look for set input mode UI only. And just to clarify what this means, is I'm only setting the UI mode up. I won't use game mode here, but it means whenever the menu is shown on screen, it allows me to click on that and be limited to that, not drive around the game mobility within the scene. Okay, so we don't get confused. Out of the other return value, we can search for set input. Set inputs, game only, game and UI. You can do all sorts of things here. But here, the way we set up here, you can focus in a parameter of the widget, which is quite cool. We won't use it in our case because we don't want to lock our mouse either. We'll leave it unlocked. And this is where you want to access the user interface, so the ability to use it with a mouse or without a mouse, or with the keyboard, etc. So we also need to ask it for the mouse, the cursor, to remain visible, because when you click on the game mode, you saw it disappeared, right? So the first time you press play, it's going to always leave the mouse visible for us. But it's nice to always include this in case, for example, you're going to be using this same event to create a pause menu. Okay, so when I pause, I already will be in the game, and when I press P to pause, I'll need my mouse cursor to be visible to be able to control the menus, right? And here there's a node which will get called show. There we go. Show mouse cursor, right? Which is used to obviously get the mouse cursor. So it's a Boolean. Remember what Booleans are? It's conditional. So it's true or false. So we can decide whether we want to show the cursor or if we don't. So that's it. That's all we need to do really there. So when I create my left menu, the engine will add the viewports, the menu, change the input mode to user interface only, and the mouse cursor will appear so we can choose the options. Let's test it now. So see now, I can click anywhere now on the screen without losing access, and it's limited to the left-hand menu. This is really important, so you're not having any problems with losing the cursor or accidentally clicking something behind the screen if there's a crazy bug. Okay, so let's go back to what we were doing here. I created the loading screen, didn't I? And the left-hand menu and everything else in this step fashion so we can see the order of events. So after I finish all of this, I'm in the game. So all the front widgets are gone and the crosshair has been added. So now I need to enable game only, because from that moment, then I want the cursor to disappear, right? And we don't want to be in the user interface anymore. So we press play. It's going to run my loading screen for 8 seconds. And watch this. So you see now the mouse is still on the screen and I can't move the character because it's in the mouse mode for the interface mode. Okay, so I need to change this when I enable this command. It looks like we might need a bit more space in our graph, right? So I can enable it actually just here. Let's move these here. Actually, I'll add it here because it's part of this section. And I'll use get player again, so I don't have to use another line coming from the other side. Okay, so get player controller here, just so it keeps it clean. And out of here, do the same. Set mode game only now this time. And here I can change my game mode to game only. Cool. And then I need to remove the mouse from the screen. So we need to get that Boolean again, don't we? Do you remember? So we'll just pull out of here and set mouse. Or show mouse cursor, wasn't it? Yeah, show. There we go. Set show mouse cursor. And here it will leave it, we'll leave it as false so it disappears. Cool, and plug them in. Pretty simple, right? So let's save and press play. So here we are with our UI mode working. The start button is bold and jumping out. Cool. And I clicked it. It's going to do our loading screen for the 8 seconds. If you think it's too much, of course, you can reduce that loading time. And there we go. So here I am in the scene and I can move about. And you don't have the mouse on the screen anymore. Cool. So a really cool thing to be aware of. It's actually quite essential to do it that way. We want our user to get a good experience. Okay, let's just comment on this part here before I forget, because this is where we add the main menu, okay, which is the completed one. To add main menu, and this part here is for creating widgets. There we go. Cool. Perfect. Everything's working correctly now. So in this class, we only talked about how we can get functionality working on those buttons. In fact, not really two buttons, the start menu, wasn't it? And we'll look at the resolution in our next class. Okay, see you then.